tell us about the beginning of Palantir. Whose idea was it?
It was Peter's idea.
Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel. And Peter's like, hey, I've got this great idea. We're going to take the back end that we used at PayPal to stop cyber criminals, and we're going to turn it into a product, and we're going to sell it to the intelligence services because obviously they could use the best software in the world. And do you want to co-found this?
So originally your clients were the U.S. government and the CIA.
Our first clients, so we got this investment from Incutel, which has always been controversial. It's a really small investment. Now they're no longer at the DPO. They exited, but it's always been very, if you Google Palantir, you'll see. And if it's a left-wing newspaper, by the way, I'm progressive, and I think the left is wrong to hate on us sometimes because without Palantir, the far right would be in a position of dominance because Palantir single-handedly, with the police forces, stopped major terror attacks. But in any case, you'll read Palantir, CIA-driven data. In German, it's data octopus, which is my favorite. It's like as if we're hovering, and none of which is true. But
where did the name Palantir come from?
In the Lord of the Rings, there's a globe which allows the forces of good to see what's going on and organize, and that's a Palantir. And the Palantir, plural is Palantiri.
Hey, so when you started the company, you got some software was sold to the Pentagon and/or CIA.
It was sold. Yeah, the Incutel gave us 3 pilots. One with the FBI, one with the agency, and one with a more classified part of the DoD. But interestingly, it was that part of the DoD that really got us off the ground because they were struggling with finding out where terrorists were putting improvised explosives, and we figured that out in our product.
The war in Ukraine is one that your company's been involved with. Can you briefly describe what was described in a Washington Post article recently about what you're doing to help the war in Ukraine?
Well, so the genesis was our product's very well known. We have a counter intel product. It's called PG, which is very well known. We have a commercial product called Foundry, is very well known. We have a product that is not well known called MetaConstellation, and that product allows you to use algorithms on large data sets to hone in on adversaries.
Are the PayPal mafia, and how are they linked to apartheid-era South Africa?
Well, they're a group of men who are at the top, the founding of PayPal, all of whom in some way or other grew up in South Africa as children. You've got Musk himself, who was born in South Africa and lived there, went to high school there until he was 18. Musk's grandfather, Canadian grandfather, had been the head of the Canadian branch of a political movement in the 1930s called Technocracy Incorporated, which in essence wanted to scrap democracy in the United States and Canada and have technocrats rule the country, which might sound familiar. That becomes a de facto fascist party, is banned during the Second World War, and then the grandfather moves to apartheid South Africa, having had no connection to the place, in 1950 because he likes the sound of apartheid. And even Errol Musk says of the grandfather, he was an open neo-Nazi. You got Peter Thiel, who was a co-founder with Musk of PayPal. Thiel was born in Germany, but brought to South Africa as a young child. His father was a mining engineer, lived in Johannesburg, and then moved to Southwest Africa.
Look, we built PG, which single-handedly stopped the rise of the far right in Europe. We built Foundry, which was used to distribute the COVID vaccine and saved millions of lives globally. We built Foundry, which was used to distribute the COVID vaccine and saved millions of lives globally.
He's asking me about Palantir. And when you look at it and you understand it, Palantir and the surveillance systems and the AI and all of it has been an outlier from the bigger companies. And it's been wanting to get big contracts, and Trump wants to use it to track illegal aliens and stuff, and the real ID that they're trying to bring in that's terrible, that never got implemented because it's unconstitutional. So I've been critical of all of that, and I obviously don't trust Palantir and the rest of the stuff it's doing. But it is small compared to all the other big AI and the Pentagon Sentinel and all the rest of it. The reason you're seeing the attacks on it everywhere is because it's trying to get contracts that other big tech companies already have, and because Palantir has been supportive of Trump. And so, yeah, Trump is going to them because they've been supporters. But all this hype about Palantir, all of these systems can be used for control. All these systems are out of control. All the AIs are woke. So Palantir is being used to run AI drones, killing people in Gaza. All of it's very concerning. But why do people know about Palantir and nothing else? Well, that's because it comes from the left, only focusing on Palantir, because it's seen as something being brought in to surveil the government itself and to try to find ways fraud and abuse. That's what Trump wants it for. Trump admin tasked Palantir with expanding U.S. surveillance state. And the New York Times and all of them are all over it. Palantir's deepening government ties sparked fears of centralized surveillance. And you've got the owner of it, the CEO of it, with all his statements about crushing the right wing in Europe and all the rest of it. I got serious concerns. It's just that endless hyping about it and only focusing on it is coming out of the left, and the populist anti-globalist movement has taken it absolutely hook, line.
Called Palantir, named for the Seeing Stones in The Lord of the Rings. It's not a household name, despite the company now being worth more than Verizon and Disney. Palantir's AI software is used by the Israel Defense Forces to strike targets in Gaza. It's used to assist the Department of Defense to analyze drone footage. And it's now helping the Trump administration with immigration enforcement. ICE records show Palantir recently received a $30 million contract to create a master immigration database. It would track migrant movements in real time. Palantir declined NPR's request for comment, but the company has justified its contracts in the past by saying it is nonpartisan, having worked across multiple administrations. Michael McGrath used to be the CEO of one of Palantir's competitors. He said it is true that both Democratic and Republican administrations have provided work to Palantir, since it has cemented a reputation in Washington for cutting-edge surveillance and data mining tech.
They can pull together information from tax returns, employment information, their immigration status, how many children they have, whether the children are legal or illegal. That can be a big asset. It could also be a big risk.
Juan Sebastian Pinto, a former Palantir employee, told me the risks should be the focus. He says he wants to shed light on how the company's products actually work.
I simply cannot live in a world where my grandchildren have to be processed through a database where their everyday activities, including social media posts, as citizens, are tracked, collected, and used for an authoritarian government's policing database.
Pinto helped market Palantir products, including the systems behind what's known as kill chains, AI-driven networks that help identify targets on battlefields. He sold Palantir surveillance tools to governments. He admits that he grappled for a while with whether he should publicly criticize the company. This is exceedingly rare, since when workers leave, they typically sign legal documents saying they won't disparage the company.
As a former employee, I'm not even sure about my personal safety in regards to speaking out.
In a letter exclusively shared with NPR, Pinto and 12 other former Palantir employees condemned the company's work with the Trump administration. They wrote, quote, "Big tech, including Palantir, is increasingly complicit, normalizing authoritarianism under the guise of a revolution led by oligarchs. We must resist this trend."
we were asked if we were willing to supply our product Anthropically, basically for free, and I was very in favor of this because our primary mission is, in fact, to set a global standard for the world for behavior.
What do you think about the use of artificial intelligence or lavender by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets?
Look, I'm not, without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right, and that's sort of the perspective I come back to.
One of the set of files we released described the intelligence relationship that we have with Israel, that the NSA has with Israel. Israel is the #1 recipient of NSA technology and NSA intelligence. We share more with Israel, even more than we do with the Five Eyes partners who develop this technology. We give more to Israel, more intelligence, raw intelligence about Americans as well, and more intelligence know-how. But at the same time, the documents that describe who are our greatest intelligence threats, who are our greatest intelligence adversaries, who spies on us the most, who is capable of spying out the most, #1 on the list is Israel as well. Obviously, the Israelis use, the most dangerous spying programs like Pegasus and others come from Israel, are developed by Israel, are controlled by the Israelis, by which I simply mean to say that Israel uses every weapon at its disposal, including gathering incriminating information about its enemies.
This is how Israel makes decisions about who to kill. Anybody above a certain threshold of that value, of that score, will be killed. So let's say Lavender has a list of millions of Palestinians. Let's say 100,000 of them have the 100% rating, 100% Hamas terrorist. Israel's going to drone strike and kill all those people. Then they're going to move on and say, everybody above 90% threshold is going to get drone striked and killed. Everybody above this, they assign a value. This is what Palantir does. They're in the business of creating murder lists. They're scraping Facebook, scraping satellite imagery from various militaries and intelligence agencies and other forms of surveillance to create databases of personal information, names, faces, dates of birth, financial information, geolocation, bank information, healthcare information, relationships, family or otherwise. And they're creating kill lists, assigning weighted scores, using algorithms, using artificial intelligence to tell the military which people to drone strike. And before people say, oh, well, that's totally innocuous, 3 Zionists involved with the Israeli government and the CIA from the very beginning created a total surveillance state platform. They are clearly loyal to Israel. They built it in Israel to kill Palestinians.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
We can figure out how, if I really want to bring about change and bring about a more adaptable culture. Up on your feet. Hey, Gio.
Yeah.
Gio. Behind me.
All right. How wonderful, Mr. Secretary, to live in a country where people are allowed to speak their mind, ask questions of their governments, because in fact, the adversaries we're up against, whether they're the genocidal communists in Beijing or the Salafi jihadists in the Middle East, don't allow such luxuries of their own citizens. So apologies for the interruption.
Killing Palestinians. Palantir kills Palestinians with their AI and technology.
Oh.
Killing my family in Palestine.
Yeah. And, you know, well, if you, do you want to hear my answer? Okay. So, I think the primary cause of death to Palestinians. Okay. Do you want to hear the answer, or do you want to yell? Well, you don't want to hear an answer? Obviously. So the primary source of death in Palestine is the fact that Hamas has realized that there are millions and millions of useful idiots that will.
Can we get security up there?
Mostly terrorists. That's true.
تعال تعال ايه بس ايه بس هات شريطه من عندي هات شريطه شريطه هات شريطه يا الله يا الله استهداف مباشر على المدنيين والأطفال والنساء على مفترق الأسر. الآن استهداف مباشر على مفترق الجسر. يا الله كمان يا الله يقتل أبنائنا بهذه الطريقة والعالم حتى هذه اللحظة لم يتحرك. العالم حتى الآن ينظر هل يدخل مساعدات إلى غزة أو لا يدخل مساعدات؟ ماذا تصنع المساعدات أمام هؤلاء الأطفال؟ هؤلاء ماتوا دون أن يأكلوا، ماتوا دون أن يأكلوا على أمة الإسلام والأمة العربية والضمائر الإسلامية تتحرك أمام هذه المشاهد. هذا جسد من 10 أطفال بداخل هذه الخيمة. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. عليكم يا أحرار العالم.
Would you like to know that Palantir has an enemies list of U.S. citizens as well? This is confirmed and verified, that Palantir has a list that they maintain for the CIA, for federal law enforcement of 1 to 2 million Americans that they have classified as potential political dissidents. They have this, you can Google this. They have millions of American citizens on a database that they created with surveillance, with artificial intelligence, with a weighted score to determine which American citizens will be a threat to the government, which ones are extremists, which ones are potentially domestic violent extremists, which ones hold anti-government views, which ones would the government have to worry about in a martial law civil war scenario. They maintain that for the United States. You're telling me that's not a problem? this is who we're dealing with.